Alright, you bastards, this is Some-Belgian-prepper, and today we're going to talk about how to survive when you're locked up in a freezing room, like a big freezer. So, before we do that, if you like detective stories, this is the first part of an 11-part series that I wrote. It's called Bloody Crosses, it's in Dutch. If you're interested, it will be down in the description. So, what am I talking about? We actually being locked up in a freezer is actually something that worried me more as a child than now, but actually it's something that still could happen. Almost every comic that I have read as a child had the trope of that one time the protagonists of the stories were locked up in a big freezer and they needed to get out of there. And it's also in many movies a trope, but actually these things happen more often than you think. We think about people. There are examples of people who worked in butcher shops that accidentally, on the last day of their shift, in the last hour of their shift, were locked up in the freezer while because of the wind blow was blowing and the door was slammed behind them. There are subway workers that were locked in the freezer. There are people who are locked in packaging companies which work with freezing products that were locked up. These things could happen, and even I could have been falling into this because my grandfather and grandmother, they had a big freezer in the back of their yard, and it was one of those freezer rooms where they could store all sort of pig carcasses. And yeah, it was an old thing. So if I, as a child, would walked in and the wind blew and the door was closed, I would have been stuck in there. So yeah, those things could really happen. But what is the thing to do when that happens? Because there are certain strategies that you can do. First strategy is try to break you out yourself. Second strategy is try to warn other people to open the door. And the third is survive as long as possible till somebody notices it, will come into the freezer and will free you. So yeah, those are the three options that you have in that kind of situation. So we are going to talk first about if you're first of all, if you're going into one of those freezer rooms. Most freezer rooms, the modern ones, I would say, have these kind of built-in safety systems. Like you can open the door from both sides, but some have safety latches, some have a sort of warning system. So yeah, those are the first things that should prevent it. But you have sometimes older models. You sometimes have bad luck that the safety system is not working properly. So those are all things that could happen. So you walk into a freezer, and the first thing I would do is preventive. Put something between the door and the freezer and the freezer frame. So if it gets blown shut closed by the wind, that there would be at least be something between them. So that's a first preventive measurement that you can take. The second one is try to warn somebody that you're going into the freezer, so they will notice it when you're not showing up. So tell to a colleague, I'm going to the freezer, and just make a little joke like, if I'm not back in 5 minutes, don't make a popsicle out of me, something like that. It doesn't always have to be such how do you say this, serious mentality, but a little joke could make person remember it and make it more aware. So that's also something you can do. If you get in the freezer, wind blows, your freezer gets shut, what to do next? Well, first of all, look if there is a safety latch or if there is an opening system from the inside. If it's not there, don't panic. Panic is always a bad advice. Try to stay cool. Yeah, bad joke, but you know what I mean. Try to stay cool. Don't start to panic. Second thing is try to yell. But unfortunately, most of these freezers are so well insulated that noise is perhaps hard to detect. You can start to bang on the door, you can start to yell, and hopefully one of your colleagues that has not checked out yet will open the freezer door or will hear the banging. That's the first thing you need to do. The second thing that you can do is, if it takes much longer, a lot of freezers have a sort of alarm system. Uh, Usually it's somewhere because temperature, because heat goes up. Somewhere on the ceiling, there's usually a sort of, how do you say this, alarm system for when the temperature is getting too high for the food, so that the food will start to spoil or get bad. So if you are able to make that sensor warmer, then there will go alarm off, perhaps alarm for the boss at the boss's cell phone. And go, oh shit, one of my freezer is getting hotter. I need to get there, or otherwise I will lose thousands of dollars or euros in meat or other frozen foods, and they will get you and they will save you. You can do this by either way. If you got a lighter or matches, he'll hold it underneath the sensor so it gets very hot very quickly, and then the alarm will get off. Or what you can do is use your body heat, like your hands, get it around it, get it a little bit warmer, and hopefully it will make the alarm go ring. So that's also a thing that you can do. But if that does not work, or there is no alarm system of that kind of nature, then you are in much more trouble. No problem. Stay cool again, and try to call for help again. If you know that it's the last day of the week, and you know you will be stuck in there for at least a day, in the worst scenario, because somebody has been locked in for 84 hours in a freezer in that way, and she was on the verge of hypothermia. She got very lucky, but it's possible to survive a situation like that. Try to find perhaps perhaps there is a computer, and usually they are on the outside, but perhaps there is a possibility that there is a sort of a measure, how do you say this, a switch to put the temperature higher or lower. Try to put it a little bit higher as possible. It will not go to 30 degrees, of course, but if you can go to -5 to -1, that could be a big difference. So that's the first thing that you need to search for. If it's not there, yet again, stay cool, try to not panic, because have a clear mind. Then you'll need to hang on. You need to sit tight in a situation. What you can do is take one of the frozen products. There was once a butcher, he got locked in his freezer, and what he did is he took one of the frozen sausages, and it was hard enough to bash open the mechanism of the lock that was frozen from the inside. And that way, by knocking on it, the ice broke and he could escape that way. So that's also something that you can do. If it's not possible, then you're in deeper problem, and then then you need to survive the heat. The cold, for a longer period of time. How do you do this? Well, first of all, I would say try to keep warm by moving. But I would also say try to not move too much. Why do I say this? If it's very cold, many people will start to jump, start to do some exercises or something, or they start to walk to one side or the other just to keep their body to let their body produce more heat. But I would advise try to move in a way that will not make you sweat. Why do I say this? If you just start to walk one way to the other to the room just to keep your body temperature a little bit higher, to make those muscles work, you will get a higher temperature. But from the moment that you start to really do some gymnastics and you start to sweat, that's even more bad, because if you start to sweat, your body will be covered in damp, in sweat, and that sweat will be a cold bridge between the cold air and your skin, and it will pull the heat directly from your skin, and that's something that you do not want. So that's the tip that I want to give you. Do not start to move too much, but also not too less. What you do next is try to insulate yourself from the cold as much as possible. How do you do this? Try to sit on something between the cold. Try to place something between you and a cold floor. So if you find a pallet or a bag or something that is less conductive, that will be less conductive to the cold, try to sit on it, and that way you have less things that you will get moist or cold onto your skin, and it will draw it out. Try to make that surface as small as possible, even if it's only for your butt. So do not lay down, because the more surface you have on another surface, the more heat will be pulled directly from your skin. Next thing is try to insulate. So what happens a lot is these butchers, these subway workers, or these other personnel had their work uniforms on, so they did not have something like a woolen sweater or some other warm clothing. So that's a really big problem. What you do in those situations is, like I said, prevent that you sit on a cold bridge, so insulate. And if you're going to contain much body heat as possible, there are certain techniques for this. The first technique is, the most important technique is keep your body core warm, because these are the organs. These are the things that are the last things how do you say this? This is the thing that needs to be warmed so your brain will not start to freeze. So everything from the outside will the first things that will be affected by the cold: the nose, the lips, the face, the fingers, the toes. Those are the first, because the blood vessels are much more thinner and they will give more heat off. And yeah, where does this heat come from? From the body core. So as long as your body core is being kept warm, then you have enough warm flow to the brain that you will be conscious. Because if you get on the verge of hypothermia, you will get very slow, you will not think properly, you will get nausea, you will get yeah, it will be a bad time. So what you do is, you sit on something that will insulate you from the whole cold bridge. You take your legs, and you put your legs against your stomach like this, and that way the lower part of your body core has more insulation, because two legs are in front of it, and your own body heat from your legs will be kind of reused to your body. And also start to do it on the upper side of the body with your arms. Your arms, these are less important than your body core. So that way, the full front of your body core will be insulated with your own arms and legs, and the body heat will be reused against your body core. And yeah, that's one way that you can outlast the cold till somebody can perhaps open the freezer, and that's very important. Also, keep your, like I said, if you do it like this, keep your head also as close as possible. The more body parts that you put together, the more reuse you have of the body heat, and the more insulating it will be for your body core, or so the organs will keep warm. The same thing for the back. If your back, don't put it against the wall, don't lean against the wall. Just sit on the insulating part. Put your legs against you. Try to keep your arms above. Try to reuse that heat, and don't lean against anything that could draw heat from your back either. So those are things. Next thing that you probably can do is, this is kind of difficult to do, but it is possible. There are certain monks in, I think it's Tibet, and they use a sort of meditation technique where they can, how do you say this? They can trick their body by believing that they are in a colder situation, or I don't know exactly how they do this, but they do a certain meditation system that their metabolism and their body is getting more heat, thinks it's get heater, so it will physically starts to heat up or work faster, and that's the way they create more body heat. And they prove it by doing this, by putting a wet towel on their back, do their meditation, and the towel, you can see the wet towel evaporate it, that because their body heat is getting higher. So that's a certain thing you can try to practice. It's very difficult, but if it's something that also special forces train into doing this when they have to operate in very cold environments, like they have to stay low in a Arctic environments for observation for a long time or something. So those are things that you can do, and actually is being issued or work in real life scenarios. Next thing is, try to eat something that will give you energy, like something with sugar. If there is something in the freezer which is easy to eat with sugar, and that sugar will give you an extra little bit fuel to your body mass core. But do not try to eat too much of it, because if you eat too much cold stuff, then yeah, then it will be, how do you say this, will be taken out body heat from the inside. So that's something that you need to be careful with. Don't take too much, but take enough that your body will get extra energy to create more heat. um, Also, when you do the body cure, you can put your hands beneath your armpits. That's also something that you can do. And yeah, if you think that you're going to stay there for a long time, another thing you can do is, if there are plastics inside of the freezer, you can take the plastics and you can put it around you to create an insulating layer. But there is something very, very important that you need to notice with this. If you're going to put plastic around you, which is most likely the one thing that you will find in the freezer, do not put it against your skin. You can put it around your clothing perhaps, but don't put it directly onto skin, because it's the same thing with insulating cold bridge. If you put plastic directly to the skin, the cold air that will be guided through the plastic will take body heat directly from the skin. So what you do is, you do plastic around you, but you create a layer of air around it. So your body heat will give off, will be insulated by the plastic, and it will be like a very small greenhouse effect. So put plastic around you, but do not make it into skin contact. Only clothing, because clothing will give a very fine layer of air that will keep some of the body heat still to your body, that you have more use of it. Uh, don't try to, like I said before, don't try to panic. And if you do all these steps, then you have more chance to survive when you're being stuck or locked up in a freezer. And it's not only in a freezer that this might work. There are people who have been stranded in Arctic environments, in igloos, in in caves, in glaciers, or some other place where it's very, very cold, and they needed to stay put till the rescue came. So these are all some techniques that you can use to survive in that part. But today we were mostly talking about freezers. So yeah, these are things that you can do. Uh, Another thing is breathing. That could help a little bit. So if you're going to breathe, breathe very, very slowly. So if you breathe fast because you're under stress, so you get rapidly and more cold air inside of your lungs, and your lungs will give the cold to your bloodstream, and that way you will lose more heat. That's very bad. So try to breathe in very slowly, so the air at your mouth will be warmed before it gets into your lungs. So try to breathe very calmly. And the next thing why breathing is very important is, a freezer is usually airtight actually. So usually in most freezers, like the most things that you see in butchers or restaurants, they will contain around 84 hours of oxygen for one person. So that's a wild guess. How do you say this? Is a wild estimate, but usually there is for 84 hours till a person breathes out as much carbon monoxide inside of a freezer as it could be dangerous. Because yeah, you will breathe, you'll take up all the oxygen at a certain point. So that's why 84 hours is very, very crucial in that part. If you're with two persons, try to calm that other person, that he will not start to breathe faster because they're in panic, and they will start to use more oxygen. And that's also a reason why you don't have why you don't use too much um, movement to stay warm. Because if you do these gymnastics that will make you breathe very fast, then there is more chance that you will, yeah, use up more oxygen. So that's why I would advise to just walk calmly, slowly, that you do not use more oxygen than you actually need to. And yeah, that's also a very important factor into surviving into a freezer. Yeah, I think I'm almost done. Yeah, and of course, try to not get wet, because yeah, the wet is also conducting heat out directly out of your body. So yeah, I think I'm ready. So I would say, if you know any tips to survive a freezer or cold temperatures, or some techniques that you know that I did not mention into this video, leave it in the comments. Let me know. I'm always eager to learn. Subscribe, like, all that good stuff. And thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Cheers.